He's demanding rent money. Can you plead guilty to taking millions of dollars, do less than a year in jail, and come out and still collect rent on the properties you bought while you were taking all that money? Richard Goslin sure thinks you can, and he may be right.
Welcome back.
Hey, look who's back. It's Richard Goslin. Hi, Richard.
Get that out of my face before I shove it up your.
Gee, you'd think a guy who just pled guilty to 3 felonies last year and is already out of jail would be happier. Plus, Richard's already got a new way of getting money.
That's our landlord? Oh my goodness.
Oh my goodness is right. How's a guy who was ordered to pay $1.8 million in restitution collect rent on homes he bought while he was stealing money? Any answers, Richard?
You get out of here.
Welcome back, welcome back, welcome back.
This is a note stuck on the front door of Lisa and Tony's Lincoln Park home a few months ago. It's a note from Richard Goslin, the man they rented the home from in 2008, before they knew Richard Goslin and his wife Rita were anything other than a nice gross-seal couple renting out a house. That all changed when they saw my first Hall of Shame investigation.
I'm Rob from Fox 2. Can I ask you some questions?
I had a bunch of money invested with her, and then all of a sudden she stopped paying me and everybody else, as far as I can tell.
Rita Goslin was suspected of taking millions of dollars from investors. She claimed she was buying up properties downriver with cash, then selling them for huge profits. Her husband Richard was her partner. Initial investors were paid big profits, luring in new investors. But it was all a sham. The houses they were buying were mortgaged to the hilt. It was just a money-making pyramid that eventually crumbled. After my story aired, the Attorney General's office charged Rita Goslin with running a Ponzi scheme that took in $2.5 million from investors like these people. Some lost their life savings. But Rita Ripoff and her husband Richard had more tricks up their sleeves. On the eve of her trial in 2010, Rita and Richard skipped town. A 7-month manhunt was on. By this time, Richard was charged with several felonies himself for bilking mortgage companies out of close to $2 million. The fugitive couple was finally found living in Humboldt, Tennessee. They were brought back to Michigan and pled guilty.
It's caused me a lot of grief.
Rita and Richard showed no emotion in March of 2011 as some of their more than 80 victims told Judge Annette Berry how they'd been cleaned out by the ruthless couple.
I will pray that you find it in your heart and ask the Lord for forgiveness and make your wrongs right by returning what clearly is not yours.
Richard was cold as ice.
I don't understand what I was supposed to do. Was I supposed to cry?
Rita Goslin was sentenced to 5 to 20 years in state prison. Richard got off with a 1-year sentence, but was ordered to pay $1.8 million in restitution, $100,000 of which was due before he was to be released from jail. But guess what? Richard was released just 6 months after his sentencing, and he didn't come up with $100,000. He came up with just $1,200. And he came up with this gut-wrenching letter. Dear Judge Berry, my name is Richard Goslin. At my sentencing hearing, you asked if I had any remorse. I was too upset to think of an answer at the time. Grab a tissue, there's more. Through all of this mess, no one ever asked me what I lost. Apparently, 4 things he didn't lose were these 4 houses the court says he got by defrauding mortgage companies. According to the Register of Deeds, several of the houses are still owned by RG Properties and Investments, a company formed by Richard and Rita in 2007, a company that was incorporated but has never filed an annual report.
According to the city, the taxes haven't been paid?
Nope.
Since
We've lived here.
Richard's been by the house several times, threatening the couple.
You give us some legal document saying that you own the place, we have no problem giving you the rent. And that's when he exploded up and said, well, we'll just get my lawyer and have you evicted out of here.
But they're not the only ones.
He claims that he still owns the place and that we got to have the rent money for him or he's got to evict us out.
James and Karen say they gave Richard their van so he wouldn't put them and their kids on the street. They too live in a house that the Wayne County Register of Deeds says still belongs to RG Properties. Then there's Michelle, who's been paying rent on this house to one of Rita and Richard's victims, who claims he now owns the house she lives in.
There was a letter on my door. The letter was from a man named Richard Goslin stating that he doesn't know who I'm renting the property from, but he is the actual owner of the house, and I am illegally renting it from someone.
While these people are spooked, the people who lived in this house are gone. According to neighbors, Richard threw this family out because they wouldn't pay him. What's Richard Goslin got to say about all this? Let's find out.
Hey, can I ask you about these houses you're renting out? You fill me in on these houses?
Get that out of my face before I shove it up your.
Come on, Richard, fill me in on that.
Hey, I'm all done
Do you
with that.
own these houses?
No.
Well, you're collecting rent from people. Yeah, you are. I talked to him. You got that van from that family the other day. Do you own these houses? Have you paid back any of the restitution? Come on, Richard.
Out of here, you.
Give me your side of the story. What's your side of the
I
story?
don't have a story. I'm done with it.
Well, you owe $1.8 million in restitution, don't you?
That's none of your damn business.
Well, it's the court paper. It's
You get out of here. I wish somebody would shoot you, dumb.
Welcome back, welcome back, welcome back.
Welcome back, Richard. Welcome back to the Hall of Shame. The past few years have been confusing for the people who live in these houses. They don't really know who owns them. Rita and Richard, their landlords, disappeared and were on wanted posters. Then they both went to jail. Rita Goslin is still in prison. Some of the people I spoke to say they've tried to buy the houses, but were told for one reason or another they couldn't. And remember, there's still a lot of victims who lost all their money in the Ponzi scheme. I've contacted the Attorney General's office. They tell me they're going to get to the bottom of this.